She had a plan for that day: a haircut, a couple of errands, and then work by 4 o'clock. It was the kind of ordinary afternoon that most of us live through dozens of times without giving it a second thought. But for 23-year-old Amber Berbiglia, that ordinary Tuesday in South Carolina would be the last afternoon she ever had. Her car was found abandoned on a quiet back road, and she was found just feet away, beaten, lifeless, gone. What happened in those final hours? Who did this? And why, years later, are we still looking for answers? Today, we're talking about Amber Berbiglia. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to keeping the stories of missing and murdered individuals alive, because awareness matters, and these cases deserve more than silence. Take a moment right now, before we go any further, and hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel reach more people, and more people means more eyes on cases like Amber's. Now, let's get into it. Who was Amber? Amber Berbiglia was 23 years old, living in the Little River area of South Carolina, a small coastal community just north of Myrtle Beach. She called Gulf Colony Lane home, a quiet residential stretch in a town that most people pass through on their way to the beach. By all accounts, Amber was hardworking and grounded. She had a job at Greg Norman's Australian Grill, a well-known restaurant in the North Myrtle Beach area, and she was the kind of person who showed up. Reliable. Consistent. She was young, building her life, 23 years old, an age where most of us are still figuring things out, still dreaming, still moving forward. And Amber was doing exactly that. But on one particular Tuesday, that forward motion stopped. Let's walk through what we know about Amber's movements on the day she was killed, because surveillance footage and witness accounts paint a remarkably detailed picture of her final hours. Amber left her apartment on Gulf Colony Lane in Little River to run a series of errands in the Myrtle Beach area. It was a normal afternoon. She had things to do, places to be. Her first stop was in North Myrtle Beach, where she went to get a haircut. Simple enough. From there, she made her way to the Ross Dress for Less on Kings Road, where she returned some items. After Ross, she was captured on surveillance camera at the Murphy's gas station, also on Kings Road, at approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just 10 minutes later, at around 2:10 p.m., she was spotted paying her cable bill on Main Street, also known as Ocean Drive, in North Myrtle Beach. That's a clear, traceable trail, surveillance footage, receipts, timestamps. And then, nothing. Amber never made it to her 4 p.m. shift at Greg Norman's Australian Grill. She was the kind of employee who showed up, so when she didn't, it raised flags. At some point that afternoon, 2 separate 911 calls came in, reporting an abandoned vehicle on Old Sanders Road, a stretch of road that runs beneath Robert Edge Parkway in North Myrtle Beach. First responders arrived to find Amber's car, and then, just feet away from that car, they found Amber. She had been beaten, severely. The medical examiner determined that her cause of death was blunt force trauma and that she had suffered 2 skull fractures. 2 skull fractures. She was found just off the road, on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, having done nothing more than run errands and head to work. Old Sanders Road underneath Robert Edge Parkway. It's worth pausing on that location for a moment, because it tells us something. This wasn't a random stretch of interstate or a remote rural area miles from civilization. Old Sanders Road is a fairly accessible area, close to populated parts of North Myrtle Beach. And yet it's the kind of road that can feel isolated, especially if you're there unexpectedly. The kind of road that doesn't have a lot of foot traffic. The kind of place someone might choose if they didn't want to be seen. The fact that 2 different people called 911 about the abandoned car suggests that the car had been there long enough, or was unusual enough to attract attention. Amber wasn't just pulled over momentarily. Something happened there, and it happened fast enough and violently enough that she had no way to call for help herself. What brought her to that road? Was she followed from one of her earlier stops? Did she know the person who killed her? Did her car break down and someone she trusted or a stranger stopped? These questions have haunted investigators and Amber's loved ones for years. Law enforcement worked to retrace every step Amber took that day. The surveillance footage from Murphy's gas station, from Ross, from the cable payment location, all of it helped establish a tight and reliable timeline. Between 2 o'clock and 2:10 p.m., Amber was alive and going about her day. She had a little under 2 hours to get to work by 4 o'clock. What happened in that window is the central mystery. Investigators canvassed the area. They looked into Amber's personal life, her relationships, her work connections, the standard avenues that homicide investigators pursue when they're trying to understand not just the how, but the why. The brutality of the attack, blunt force trauma, 2 skull fractures, suggests either an extreme rage killing or a very deliberate act of violence. This was not subtle, this was not accidental. Someone beat Amber Berbiglia and left her to die on Old Sanders Road. The Horry County Police Department took on the investigation, and the case has received periodic attention over the years. Tips have come in. People in the community have spoken out. True crime advocates have kept the story circulating online, hoping that renewed attention brings forward the one witness, the one piece of information that cracks the case open. As of the most recent publicly available information, the murder of Amber Berbiglia remains unsolved. Unsolved. Her killer has not been charged, has not been brought to justice, and has, as far as we know, been walking free. Now, I want to be careful here, because we're not in the business of naming suspects without evidence. That's not what this channel is about. But we can talk about the kinds of questions investigators and armchair sleuths alike have been asking. The tight geographic and timeline window is actually helpful. In theory, Amber was at Murphy's gas station at 2 p.m. She was on Main Street at 2:10. Her body was found on Old Sanders Road. That's a small geographic radius and a narrow time frame. Did someone see her at one of those locations and follow her? Was it someone she encountered during one of her returns or transactions? Someone who felt a grievance, real or imagined? Or was this someone from her personal life who knew her routine that day? The fact that surveillance footage tracked her so clearly means there's a real possibility that the same cameras caught someone else, someone who appeared in her orbit more than once that afternoon. Investigators over the years have likely pursued these threads. The public, unfortunately, doesn't always get to know how far those threads lead. What we do know is that someone in the North Myrtle Beach area, likely someone who was in that same geographic zone that afternoon, knows something. Maybe they were there, maybe they saw something, maybe they've been carrying that knowledge for years. Amber Berbiglia deserved to go to work that Tuesday. She deserved to come home. She deserved a future. Cases like hers don't get solved by police work alone. They get solved when communities refuse to let them go quiet. When people share, when people remember, when someone who's been holding a secret for years finally decides that a young woman's life is worth more than their silence. If you were in the Horry County, South Carolina area, or if you know anything at all about what happened to Amber on that Tuesday afternoon, the Horry County Police Department is the agency to contact. Tips can also be submitted through Crime Stoppers, which allows for anonymous reporting. Her family has been living without answers for years. That's a weight that doesn't go away. Every anniversary, every holiday, every time they see someone who looks a little like her crossing the street. The grief doesn't disappear, it just changes shape, and it stays heavier when there's no closure. For Amber, for her family, this case needs to be solved. Before I let you go today, I want to leave you with a question, and I genuinely want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Amber's movements that day were documented at multiple locations. The timeline is tight, the geographic area is small, and yet, years later, no one has been charged. So here's my question for you. Do you think the key to this case lies in the surveillance footage that's already been collected, something that investigators may have missed or underweighted? Or do you think the answer is in Amber's personal circle, someone who knew her and knew her plans that day? Tell me what you think. I read every single comment, and sometimes your insights lead me down paths I hadn't considered. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's the simplest, most powerful way to support this channel and help make sure cases like Amber's stay in front of people who might one day hold the answer. We owe it to her to keep asking questions. Rest in peace, Amber Berbiglia.